Welcome. In this video, we're going to use the AWS CLI command line interface to create a DynamoDB database. I do have another video where I did this using the Amazon AWS console. That might be a bit easier to follow along if you're not familiar with DynamoDB, but I felt that it would be useful to know how to do this using the CLI. Before I get started, if you don't have the CLI installed on your computer, just Google AWS CLI installation, and that'll bring you to the AWS documentation, which shows how to install the CLI on Windows, Linux, Mac, and what have you. All right. Okay, so to get started, we need to bring up the CLI. So we'll do that now. And first thing you need to understand with the CLI is that all commands start with AWS, followed by the service name, so DynamoDB, and then a subcommand, in this case, help. So help is basically going to show us all the commands which are available in the CLI for DynamoDB, and you can see the list of commands here. You know, basically batch commands, delete commands, describe commands, get items. You know, there's a whole bunch of list tables. That list tables is a useful one. List-tables. We should try that now. Let's just see what tables we've got. So AWS DynamoDB list tables. And that's going to basically give us a list of every table we've got, of which there are none. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is create a table, and we're going to do that here. I've pre-written the commands to make this a bit faster, and I'll just paste them in as we go. So AWS DynamoDB create table. This is a command to tell AWS we want to create a table. The table name is books, and then we define some attributes. The important takeaways from this are that we're going to have two attributes. One is author, which is type string. That's the attribute type, and then we've also got another one which is attribute called title, and again the type is string. Attribute type string. LS. So these are your columns really. Every entry will have an author and a title. In this case, and that is because the next line we're defining the primary key. And what we've done here is we're saying that the primary key is made up of a combination of the author and also the title. And we're also defining that, so the author is a hash key type. That means it's the partition key. And the title is a range type, which is a sort key. So really these are names for the same things you'll be familiar with on the console. Hash is a partition key, and a range is a sort key. This means that in the case of our table we're creating, every item must have a unique combination of author and title. You won't be able to have two books with the same author and the same title. And something to think about when you're designing your tables to ensure that the way you design it actually makes sense for your application. And then the last option we have here is provisioned-throughput, and this is defining the read and write capacity units, which we're putting as 1. And I've discussed this on the previous video for using DynamoDB with the console, but it could have its own video to discuss this. But a read capacity units is one read capacity unit can read 2 items of 4 kilobytes per second, and one write capacity unit can write 1 item of 1 kilobyte. The bigger your items you're writing, or which would be your entries in the database, your rows, or reading, the more read or write capacity units you'll be using. So just hit enter, and this gives you the output telling us our attributes: author and title, type string. The schema, we have an author and a title for the schema, which is our primary key. The table status is creating, so it's asynchronous. The command returns before the table has finished being created. Something to look for with AWS when you're coding is you want to make sure whatever resource you're working with has actually completed what it needs to do when the commands or you respond asynchronously. Okay, so now you might want to have a look at your tables again. So we'll just go AWS DynamoDB list tables. And here we go, we've got a table called books. Now, you probably want to see this with the console. So we'll go to the console here and go to the menu, tables, and there's nothing here. So this will probably be a little bit confusing, but actually and it would throw you off the first time. But you want to make sure that you're which region you're working in on the console. So you type AWS configure get default region, and we're in US East 1. However, on the console, we were in Singapore. So we want to flip our region over to US East 1, which is North Virginia. And this will should list our table. And here we go. Close these. So there's our table, books. There's active, items, and we've got nothing in there, but we have got an author and a title. All right. So go back to the CLI, and now we've found the table, and we want to add some items to our table. So to do this, we're going to use our first command, put item. And so DynamoDB put item in the table books, and the items we want to put are author, title, and year published. And the values are going to be Tom for the author, book 1 for the title, and the year 2000 for the year published. Noting that the year published is a number, and the other title and author are strings. We also have another parameter at the end here, return consumed capacity, and that's asking the CLI to let us know how much capacity we use when we run the command, and that can be important when gauging read and write capacity units. All right, so this just returns the consumed capacity, and we used 1 capacity unit for that command, which you certainly couldn't use less. Okay, so the table name is book. So we've created an item. What we'll do is we're going to list all the items, and AWS DynamoDB scan. So as you know, a scan is a slower way of retrieving data from the database, less efficient, but we just want to return all the items, so we do want to return them one by one. Table name was books, and here we go, exactly the data we just put in, year published, author, title, and that we only have 1 item. There's a count of 1, and if you want to have a look at the CLI, that will show you much the same thing. We'll go back to CLI, we'll refresh, and that will say Tom, book 1, year 2000. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is perhaps we'll want to add another item beyond that. So let's pull up the command for that. It's going to be the same command we had just now, basically. So same thing, put item, books. This one's going to be called book 2 as the title, and we've got a different the same publish year we've put in there. Yep, year 2000. Again, hit enter. And that's great. And what we can do is we can list we can do another scan of the database to show us the items in there. And here we've got 2 books, both by Tom. One's called book 1, one's called book 2. Back to the CLI, and we can refresh that, and we've got the 2 items. But you see here, we've made a mistake. One, we've called it year published, and the other entry we've called the attribute published. So that's a bit of a mistake in that you'd want that to be consistent. Now it is a key value pairs in DynamoDB, so you can create as many attributes as you like, but you'd want your published state of your books to be consistent. So we might want to fix that up. So what we'll do is we're going to go and we're going to remove an attribute, and we can do that here. Got a command for that. Let's clear some space for a second. Okay. Right. Okay. The the command here is update item. So previously we put item, now we update item, and we're going to do it in the books table, and then the item we're going to be updating is the one with the primary key that is Tom and book 2, and what we want to do here is we want to remove published attribute from that. So we're basically saying from the item, which is Tom Book 2, remove the attribute published, and they're going to return the we have a special return value here. I'll talk about that in a minute once we hit enter on the command. So here you go. It's returning the return value of all new is telling us that in the output of the command to return the attributes. So if we go back to the console again, just refresh, and you can see that published attribute for Tom Book 2 is now gone. Right. Okay. So we've tidied that up. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to update an item, and we're going to want to add a year published attribute to the same entry, so that it's aligned with the first one. So let's try that. This is how we update an item. Again, specifying the table name, specifying the key, which is Tom Book 2, the same one we just specified just now. But this time we want to set an attribute. So we want to set year published, and the attribute year published, and the value we're going to give it is a number, which is 1989. So you can see here, update expression, year published equals :t, and then we're defining that the attribute value of t is this number 1989. So we'll just to confirm, to explain what we're doing, we're adding a year published here to this entry here, this last line. And when we hit enter on that, we've specified the return value of all new again, so it's going to give us the output of the new attributes and new data, which is resulted from the command. And here we've got Tom Book 2 1989. Go back to the console, refresh, and here you go. We've got a year published of 1989. So that's nice and tidy now. All right. So if we want to move along, we might want to add even more values. So we can actually add values from a JSON file, and this is important because you don't really want to add them one by one like this using the CLI. It would be much easier to dump all your data into a JSON and then to effectively update your database with all that data. So cat books.json, and this is a file that I've created. In this file, effectively we're saying that we have a bunch of put requests, and where we specify the details about each item. So this one put request, and then its author is Jane, my first book, year 2000 is a published year, and then another item, Jane, my second book, and this one's published in the year 2001. So how do we use that command? So it's pretty straightforward. We just type AWS DynamoDB Batchwrite item. This is another subcommand, and then we specify using this request items from the books.json file. So we're basically just telling the CLI that we want to batch write items from a JSON file. We type enter, push enter here, and then it returns with unprocessed items none. Now, if you want to see the items in your database, we can just again do another scan of the table, and this is going to list all of our items. Now it gets a bit messy here because we've got several, but we've got the Jane, my first book, year 2000, Jane, my second book in the year 2001, and then the original items we did from the CLI, Tom, book 1, and then Tom, book 2. And if we go over to the console, we hit refresh, we can see our items here, which is pretty good, pretty straightforward. All right, so the next thing you want to be able to do is you want to be able to get an item from the database. So you're gonna, for example, if you want to retrieve an item, in this case, let's say we want to retrieve the book. I'll clear some space. Sorry, clear some space. Paste it in. Sorry. DynamoDB get item this time. Again, we specify the table name, and then we're going to specify the author. Now, this is not going to work, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. And it's going to have an error. And there's a reason that it won't work. It's taking a little while for some reason to come back. Just cancel that for a second. Just paste it again. Should error, there it is. An error occurred. Now, the reason for this is, and I wanted to demonstrate it, was that your primary key is made up of your author and your title for this table. So you must always specify the author and the title, the complete primary key, not just the partition key. So to fix that command, we'll try it again, but this time we're going to specify the key as the author and the title. And we have a few more attributes here. So these items basically are there's consistent read. So we said this is we want this to be a consistent read. It's just an option which you can put on with the type of read you want to do. Just doing it here for demo purposes. And then the projection expression. This tells it that we just want to return the title. So we want to grab the value, which is title, from the item which is title Tom and author Tom and the title of book 1. And again, we're also asking for our consume capacity. And here we go. It returns the title. So you could also specify additional items in the projection expression. So we'll try that here. This time on projection expression, we're saying we want the title and the year published, which is probably a bit more useful. And then here we go. The year published is 2000, and the title is book 1. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so those were get item, and then finally we'll move on to doing a few queries against the database. So if we these are just queries. Remember, queries are efficient as opposed to scans. And again, so the we're going to type in AWS DynamoDB query books. We want the author to be the name, which is, and the name is Tom. So again, we have a condition expression, and then we specify the attribute value. So the author must be name, and we define name as a string, which is Tom. Push enter. And here we go. This gives us both books, which are from the author Tom. We didn't need to specify the the author and the title. We just specified the partition key. So in this case, because it's a query. So a query, we must have the partition key, but we don't have to have the sort key. And we can do the same thing again. Say we wanted all the books who are published by Jane. Push enter. On that same thing, DynamoDB query, table name is books, the author is equal to name, and we define name as Jane. So there's 2 books by Jane. Right, okay, that's great. And then the next thing we want to do here is we'll do a few more commands just to show you some other examples. We'll describe table books. And this is basically, again, telling you this is the information we had originally, just to show to you, again, the attributes in the table, and then the key schema. It doesn't tell you the attributes, which are the optional ones, either just the ones which make up the primary key here, which have been listed here. We'll do another few commands. So we're going to do a query against a table. Again, the table name is books, and then we want the author to be name and the title to be book title. And here we say that we want to have so the author will be Jane, and the title will be my first book. So this is similar to the previous query we did, whereas previously we are only specified the author as being Jane, and this one we're specifying both the author and the title. So both the partition key and the sort key. So this one we've got the book which is by Jane, and it's called My First Book. So just to contrast this, this is a command we ran previously. In this command we just got the books which were written by Jane, so we had 2 results. But this one we're limiting it to only the book which has the title My First Book. So we just show that previous command again, and then and that gave you the 2 book results. Right, okay. So the next thing we probably want to do is let's have a look at deleting an item finally. So delete an item, you can just do this, AWS DynamoDB delete item, table name books, and then we specify that the key will be Tom, and so the author is Tom and the title is book 2. And we're specifying the return value here, basically telling us all the old values before the changes were made. So all new is the result of your command, the new information which has been added or edited, whereas all old means return the values before the action was taken. And we just push enter here, and there we go. We deleted the item from the table, which was Tom book 2. If you flick over to the console and we refresh it, and we can see it's gone. Book 2, Tom book 2 is gone. It's no longer there. All right. Now you can delete all your items one at a time. If you have a really big database, it wouldn't be optimal to delete the items like that. So it can be easier in a non-production scenario to just delete the table entirely and recreate it if you wanted to delete everything in it. And the command for deleting a table is AWS DynamoDB delete table, and then specify the table name books. Press enter, and that's done. It's deleting. The status is deleting. The table name is books, and we'll just go back to the CLI, and the table should be gone. It's gone completely. So click on tables, refresh, nothing there. And then you can also confirm this from the CLI as well. So you can do, just confirm it via the list tables. So we'll do that. Sorry, I can't find the command, but I'll just type it. DynamoDB list tables. There's no tables. Right. So that concludes this tutorial. I hope it was useful. Apologies if it was a little bit overwhelming. I suggest you do a bit of reading up on DynamoDB and look at the video I did with the console, and we'll look at doing a theory video on DynamoDB as well. Thanks for watching.